Charles Malky, biologist and plant expert here in the Hollywood Hills where we grow cool plants, and today we're going to be talking about winterizing your fig tree. And this process actually applies to all sorts of fruit trees all over the United States, and the goal is to keep your plants warm when you're going into freezing temperatures. And the product I want to share with you here today is this, which is IVOrganic. It's a 3-in-1 tree guard paint. Just add water, a natural tree trunk and branch barrier, protection against damaging sunburn and insects and rodents, for use on your roses, fruit and nut trees, ornamental trees and shrubs. And it's a non-toxic, environmentally safe and organic product. And we're using color white today. This product is also available in the green as well as brown colors as well. We're just going to open the can here. I want to get this started and mixed. And the benefits of this product and what we're going to use it for is to basically offer the plant protection from sun scald, which is, here's actually the paint powder, and here's our can, and then it comes with this oil vial, which is bubble wrap. I'll take off the wrap so you can see what this looks like here. So here's the oil vial, and all we're going to do here is take the paint. I want to get this actually to start absorbing the water, so when we get to that level we'll be ready to use it. So we're just going to put the paint powder in here. The directions say to actually fill it up halfway with water, and then we're going to stir it and then add the oil vial. And the oil actually has one of the oils in here is castor oil, which is actually a proven oil for actually repelling rodents. And especially as we're going to wrap this tree up to winterize it, that's going to help us actually make sure that rodents don't actually gnaw on the bark as they actually starve through the winter months and try to get to the sap and the sugars of the tree. So now we've got an IVOrganic color white paint, which is infused with these natural oils to help repel rodents as well as insects from damaging the tree. And additionally, it's got oils in here which are also anti-fungal as well. So that's going to help prevent disease and fungus from actually growing on the plant. I'm going to leave this can here so it stays out of the way as we work on the plant. So here we go now. Climb up here. I've noticed within the tree that we've got one last ripe fig. I don't know if you see that here. I'm just going to pick it here and take a look at it. So this variety is a green fig. We've been growing it in the family for decades. I don't know the name of it. Cadota is one variety of green figs, and my family has actually taught me to peel it, and the other people that have tried peeling figs, they too agree that it actually tastes sweeter if you actually peel the plant. So we're gonna just peel it the best we can. I like to bite off the end as well. And I just want to show you the inside of this, just so you can see how beautiful the coloring is of it. And the flavor of most figs is kind of, for me, a cross between a strawberry and some sweet honey and other delicious sweet fruits. And I got to enjoy this before we start pruning away. So here we are now. We've got this giant fig tree behind me, and the goal is to actually prune it so that when we wrap it, it's actually going to be of a manageable size. The best time for pruning your fig tree is ideally right at the end of your last frost, and maybe even a couple of weeks thereafter. The logic behind it is all of the greenness within the plant and all of the sugars that are in the leaves go back into the tree trunk, that eventually go back into the root system. The flow of the juices in the plant have actually come to a near halt as the metabolism of the plant, and most plants in the winter go into hibernation. Even if they're still green, their metabolism is so much slower, and so as soon as that last frost ends and the plant is now getting ready for spring, bloom and growth, right in that window, just before all that happened, would be the ideal time for pruning. But if you've got to winterize your plant, and here we are in Southern California, so this process doesn't necessarily apply, but there is benefit in actually putting IVOrganics on your plants to offer protection against sun scald, which we'll discuss in a minute, as well as any rodents and fungus that can affect your plant during the winter months. So it'll offer that protection at least for your plant to get it prepared for the springtime. So the first thing we're going to do is actually prune the plant. We're going to turn it into a manageable size, and figs can actually be pruned anywhere down to 50 to as much as 80% of all of the new growth that it's actually accomplished in the last year. And this fig tree behind me I've actually brought here into this garden here in the Hollywood Hills about 2 years ago. And in 2 years, and I'll stand next to this again, you can see that it's grown. My reach is about 8 feet, so this tree is probably 16 to 20 feet tall in just 2 years. It's a beautiful tree. And the reason for winterizing your plant again is to make sure that that height continues. A lot of figs in the rest of the country, if they're not protected, they'll die down all the way to the ground. Imagine when you're going into freezing temperatures, the cells of the plant die, but all the root system is still protected by the warm earth. Even with snow on the ground, the earth is still warming the roots enough that it'll come back in the spring, and a lot of figs will actually continue to grow even though the top of the plant has died. But to prevent you having to restart with new growth every year, we're going to talk about winterization. So the first step here. So the first step is, you got to pick a tool. I've got here my loppers, and then I've also got my saw. And my saw is going to be my preferred, way of pruning. And the goal is to actually bring the height down. And again, this is all brand new growth. One other thing I want to share with you. Let me see if I can find it. Take a look at it. And I want to make another point when it comes to pruning your figs. The more you prune it, the more they grow in the spring and summer. And for the more it grows, every single leaf will support another fruit, as you can see along the way. Every leaf is supporting another fruit, every leaf another fruit, every leaf another fruit, all the way up. So the more you actually cut your plant, the more figs you're going to enjoy. So this is an important tip. When it comes to specifically fig trees, you can't go wrong by cutting it more than less. The more they grow in the spring, the more food you and your family are going to get to enjoy. So here's one point. Let's continue with the pruning. So here's another branch. When we're actually now selecting where to prune, I'm actually now looking at the nodes. Aside from the height, and I know I want to bring the tree down to about this height, the goal is to create a canopy that will be within reach. We're going to continue actually pruning the tree throughout the spring and summer next year. And the goal is not to have a tree that's going to be feeding so many birds. The goal is hopefully this family is going to get to enjoy reaping and reaching most of the figs within reach. So we're going to try to come down as low as we can. And I'm now looking at the buds around the nodes, and I'm trying to find a bud that is pointed away from the center of the tree. So I'm finding a node that's over here is one, and here's a second. So I'm actually going to go with this one over here because I like the height, and we're just going to cut it like so. And here we go. And I want to make another lesson to you guys that's a little closer so you can see what I just did. So what I did was I basically looked for the node, and at this node you can actually see that this is where the leaf scar was. Once upon a time there was a leaf that was actually connected right here, and then right above it is going to be where the new shoot is going to grow. So if we want it to actually grow away from the center of the plant as we just did back there, then I'm going to want to cut it. Since this is the bottom of the tree, let's say if this were still connected to the tree, and I would cut it about 1/4 inch above the bud and cut it like so at an angle. And the reason for the angle is to make sure that if there's any water that's resting on the top, that it actually falls off the plant and doesn't collect and rot at the top of the tree. So this now would be the new growing point for the plant. Let's continue. And there we go. This is our new baby tree. It looks pretty dramatic, and a lot of viewers, and I've shared this with a lot of people, and they're like, oh my gosh, you just killed my tree. But keep in mind, this tree can grow even taller than whatever you just saw by summer of next year. And again, for every leaf, that's one fruit. If you kept it as a magnificent large tree, it's only going to grow a few inches, and those few inches will support a few inches of fruit. Then you're going to end up with an inferior crop compared to what we're going to accomplish here. So the next step is to actually coat the tree now with the IVOrganics 3-in-1 Tree Guard paint. Again, this offers protection against sun scald going through the winter. It offers protection against sunburn in the summer. It also offers protection against insects. Again, the outer layer or the bark of the tree, just like your skin, is not alive. It's actually your dead tissues. The very top couple of inches, not inches, but cells are actually dead cells. And the goal is to actually offer protection against any of the wood-boring insects, against such as termites and beetles, and also to offer protection from actually cracking, because once it cracks, that'll be an invitation for beetles, as well as bacteria and viruses and other diseases, including bacteria and mold, to actually get into the tree. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to coat the product with the IVOrganics 3-in-1 Tree Guard paint. But one other thing I want to share with you that's unique to figs is if you take a look here at the center of the tree, so here's the bark. Underneath the bark, the living tissue is, you might see a little bit of the greenness that's right underneath the bark. That's the cambium tissues, and that's what carries the water and the sugars up and down the plant. And then right here in the center, for the first few years of the fig tree's life, the center part, or the pith, is actually very soft. And actually, here it is. I'm so glad I can show you the difference. You can see how milky white that is. And if I just gently go in with the point of my scissors, I can actually go all the way down. And I've actually seen some pruned figs where ants would actually make a home digging their way all the way into the heart of the tree. So IVOrganics, by actually painting this on here, it's actually going to offer protection from actually any insects, boring insects, again, also the smaller stuff, the bacteria and the viruses, from getting into the plant and actually affecting and possibly causing disease. So here we go. So we're just going to start at the base of the tree and work our way up. You can stop it now. This is going to be too boring. So we just coated the tree, the fig tree, with the IVOrganics paint. We just brushed it on. And if you're here in Southern California, you're done. I've just coated the entire tree trunk, the branches. I've actually sealed the very top. We just talked about the pith, which is the center of the stem, and how that's soft and typically collapses over the next few weeks as it dries out. So you may need to reapply and cover those ends. And again, only if you're not going to go through the next steps of winterizing your plant if you live in the colder parts of the country and around the world where the temperatures actually fall below freezing and stay below freezing through winter. So we're going to follow the next few steps, but I just want to show you some more details here on the plant. So if we take a look here, you'll actually see again, we did the prune, as you can see here on the ends. Right here is where the bud is, so it's going to grow away from the center of the plant. Over here, we did the same thing on this end as well, where we pruned right above the bud, so it's going to prune, and grow away from the center of the plant. So there's a strategy with all of this, and you'll notice again that the tips are now covered, like so. And here's the pith that's now covered with the IVOrganics 3-in-1 Tree Guard paint. So the next step here is to actually now wrap your plant. I've got here some burlap. It's actually made out of plant material. There's actually a few sources that burlap can actually be made from, but it's basically, I'm just gonna say it's cellulose. It's made out of cellular walls, and we're actually gonna use burlap. And burlap is the preferred product for wrapping your plant with, just as what compost does, and as it breaks down and actually releases heat. By wrapping your plant with burlap, and especially through the winter, it's gonna offer some warmth to your plant. But this is just one layer of protection. There's a second thing we're going to do to complete this. So we're now going to wrap the tree with burlap, starting low and working our way up. And now we're just going to go with our twine. We're going to take our twine here and basically secure the burlap against the tree. And we're going to continue this process all around. Growing. So now we're at the point where we got to basically now protect the burlap. We've just covered it with the burlap. We've tied it with the string, so the burlap is now, you know, snugly against the bark of the tree. And now we're just going to basically waterproof it. And there's a lot of choices when it comes to waterproofing. And what I'm noticing most of people doing, and a lot of research is supporting, using a product such as this, which is using a tarp. And these tarps are quite expensive. It could be anywhere from $10 to $20 for a tarp such as this one, in comparison to, you can just pick up some trash bags, which will cost you pennies per bag and accomplish the same, if not better, results. And I'll explain to you why. Another thing that I've got here as well is this bag that I got from my dry cleaners, and this bag could also do the job as well. But one of the choices I want to share with you is I've got here a black trash bag, and this could be used, but the reason for not using black is black absorbs heat, and by absorbing heat it can actually fool the plant into thinking we're back into spring or summer, and there could be some growth actually happening underneath. While we're actually going into these cooler temperatures, we want to keep it cool, but the burlap's doing is offering some warmth to keep the plant going through the winter without hopefully any, and if any, minimal damage to the cells of the plant. So I'm not recommending using a black bag to accomplish it. My first and second choice would be to use a clear bag such as this. My dry cleaning bag can actually accomplish it. But just because of the size of the tree, I'm going to be using this bag, which is white, and this will reflect the light and again accomplish the goal of waterproofing the burlap so that the burlap doesn't freeze and actually cause any more cellular damage to the tree. So we've just decided that we're going to go with the white plastic bag. The white plastic bag being that it's going to reflect the most amount of light, and then the goal being is that we want to make sure that this burlap remains dry. So when actually wrapping your tree, be sure to actually start with the base and work your way up. The goal being is as you add your layers, the plastic will actually reflect the water, and it'll actually go from one layer, which is, the bottom layer will actually be protected by the next layer of plastic above it, and the water will just run off and not run back in and get this wet, and when this freezing temperature is not freeze and actually damage the cell tissues of the tree. So we're just now going to wrap the base of the tree. We're going to take our plastic bag here, and I'm just going to rip it actually apart like so. And I can use this to just wrap it around the tree like so. And then we're just going to take our twine and secure that. And you don't want to do this too tight. You just want to, again, make sure that it remains waterproof. And we're just going to wrap that on and secure, again, another loose knot around it. We'll continue this process now with the next plastic bag, doing exactly the same thing. We can actually run this over the top, open a little hole, and we can pull this down. And that'll form the next layer. And again, you can now see when the water hits this, it's going to run down. This here is level 1, and it'll actually flow over level 2. And then we're going to do our third bag like so. And then we'll tie that on as well. I'll actually start the process. So here we are now. We just wrapped it, starting with the base. We used one bag at the base. We used a second bag for this middle section, and we did our last bag on the top as a third bag. So this is now going to run the water from level 1 over level 2, which will then go over level 3. And we just concluded this branch. We're going to repeat that for each of the branches around, and then that'll be it. And we're pretty much done with winterizing. The last step is actually now protect the root zone and the root ball. I've seen some videos where people are actually removing the soil around the plant and installing boxes and doing a whole bunch of creative ideas. But all that needs to happen is you're basically trying to create a warm blanket around the root zone. And we're going to accomplish this by just putting a bag of wood chips. And again, the wood chips, as it decomposes naturally, will actually offer additional heat to the plant and keep the snow off the roots. So we're going to basically take our entire bag. I actually opened it just to show you, but you can keep it sealed. You can do this with wood chips or with a bag of leaves. And we're just going to put the bag on one side of the root ball like so. And then we're going to take a second bag and put that on the other side. So we've just winterized the tree, and if you live in any parts of the country, you'll now keep your plant protected with the plastic and the burlap, as well as these wood chips around the root base, all the way until your last chance of frost, and maybe plus another week or two, just to make sure. Here in Southern California, specifically Los Angeles, your chance of frost is typically the last week of December and maybe the first or second week of January, and that's it. So this process is typically not practiced in the Los Angeles area, but if you're up in the mountains where there is a chance of snow, this may be something that will allow you to grow fruit trees that otherwise will not grow in those areas. Now that we've actually concluded it, and again, we know we don't need this here in Los Angeles, I'm going to take this all apart and share one more idea with you. So here we are. We just finished up unwrapping the burlap off the fig, and in the sense of winterizing, we already discussed the idea of the IVOrganics 3-in-1 Tree Guard paint offering protection if you're not in those super freezing areas, like where you've got that continuously frost or that snow that's on your ground, potentially damaging your fruit trees. Your IVOrganics that are on your tree during the winter actually offer, we talked at the beginning of the video, is sun scald protection. And sun scald is a phenomenon that occurs when the daytime temperatures warm up. And this is, we're talking about in the middle of winter, where we can have a 70 or 80 or even a 60-degree day, but it actually warms up and allows the sap to continue, to flow back up and into the tree, followed by an evening that takes us back down into freezing. When that happens, the bark of your tree can crack. That actually allows openings for bacteria, viruses, mold, as well as wood-boring insects to get into the tree and compromising the health and the life of your tree. So doing the IVOrganics in the winter is an excellent time to protect it from such cracking, as well as the oils that are in it protect it from the rodents. It's actually a deterrent and a repellent against many rodents that may gnaw on your tree, as well as offering the protection to keeping insects off your plant as well. So we've discussed the importance of the IVOrganics on your tree. The next thing I want to share with you just briefly, because I've got a lot of people who are asking me about, help us pot a fig tree. And I've got here with me a cutting of a fig, actually off of this exact variety, and we're going to talk about cuttings in a second. But if you were to graduate the fig to another pot, and now we are in the month of September, we would maybe want to graduate it to a pot of this size or maybe half this size. But again, for timing, being that we're in September, you're not supposed to be potting your fig at all. So remember this fig here. Be sure to subscribe down below so you can watch the future video on how to repot a fig. But the best time for repotting your fig is going to be, again, after your last chance of frost and just before it begins to grow, or even if it grows just a little bit. But the best time for doing it is going to be late winter or early spring. We've already discussed other videos in regards to potting techniques using a clay pot, and preferably without glaze, and the benefits behind doing that. And we've also discussed the wimpy plant test that we can actually use for this as well. And I'll put all of those links down below. So in regards to repotting the fig, we're again in September. We're not going to repot it now. It's only going to be sitting in your pot fairly dormant, and there's not going to be much activity in the sense of growth or roots, and you don't want it sitting in the soil where the roots are not basically growing actively into it. For the health of the plant, it's actually best not to repot your plant at this time of the year, and just hang tight. There'll be more work to do in the spring. The last thing I want to do, we're now surrounded by all of these cuttings, and the first thing I want to share with you is we talked about all of these figs, and I'm sure some of you viewers were like, oh, what a waste. Again, being in September, we've only got another month, and there's no way that these figs can actually ripen into something edible. The plant's trying to produce more fruit, but as soon as the temperature starts cooling in the upcoming few weeks, all of these figs are going to fall off naturally. So we didn't lose anything. I got that last fig and I got to enjoy it. And the owner here got to enjoy several dozens as well this year. And again, this is only year 2. And we're going to have so many more to enjoy next year, and we're going to grow this in a more compact fashion. But in regards to using the wood, I'm going to teach you quickly how to turn this into a cutting. I've got here my pruners. Between the two, the preferred plant to use is this one here on my right, as it's got more brown wood. The green wood over here is too young and actually too susceptible to actually drying out and desiccation, and it's just harder to work with in my experience in regards to rooting. So I'm going to be going for the brown wood. The green tip that's over here, I'm actually just going to cut off, and I'm going to cut it off right above the node. I'm going to remove whatever leaves are left on this plant, and I can now cut it into segments, and I'll actually it's usually the nodes where the roots are going to come out, so I'm just going to cut right below the node, about 1/4 inch. And now I've got one cutting. I'll do a second one right here. I'm basically finding the node. I'm going to cut about 1/4 inch below that. And now I've actually got 3 cuttings here. And what I can do is just take one of the ends that I want them to actually root, and I've got here a rooting powder. And the rooting powder not only encourages roots, but it also is against any fungal growth from actually happening on the root tip. So we're going to find our end where we want it to root, and we're just going to dip that like so into the rooting powder. I'm going to prepare these other 2 and 1. And what we're going to do next is actually just put it into a bag. I want to show you this. It's actually used like for orchid mixes and stuff. We're just going to put the moss in here like so. Throw in our cuttings. And cover it with some more moss like so. What we're going to do next is get some water, which I've got here. It doesn't take much water. The whole goal is we just want it to basically steam up in here. You don't want it to be overly saturated. And what we're going to do is actually place this inside the house on an east side window where it'll get some morning light. And again, I'm going to make sure all the tips are actually wrapped into this moss. We're going to put it on an east window where it gets morning light, and then that's it. And you'll notice within the next 4 to 8 weeks, these cuttings will actually start rooting and will create your next plants that you get to enjoy in the spring. Make sure that when you grow, you don't grow them outside, as the winter is going to be too cold. If you're going to want to do these cuttings and get them to grow throughout the winter, you're going to have to keep them indoor or in a greenhouse. Otherwise, don't do this process and save the cuttings maybe in your refrigerator until later winter or spring. Anyways, we've covered so much. I hope you found this video informative and helpful for your gardening needs, and if so, be sure to like it, and most importantly, subscribe down below. As we discussed, there's so many more videos all related to what we also discussed, and be sure not to miss it by subscribing below. Thanks again for watching, and happy gardening.